An independent mind is a terrible thing to waste. I watched the movie Divergent a while back, and then sometime after that, I caught parts 2 and 3. Now, while that trilogy wasn't exactly known for being box office hits, I have to say I kind of got a lot out of it. There was a message to these films, and that message went like this: the bravest among us don't fit in to any specific mold. They think for themselves. They see things others are unwilling or unable to see, and they usually get a lot of grief for being different. Now, that's not to say this goes for everyone who doesn't fit in. I'm well aware that there are some seriously disturbed people out there who also don't fit in. But that has more to do with them having a lot of problems as opposed to being something of a seer. In a world filled with those who belong to a group, think as others do, and adamantly believe in their beliefs, being someone who truly thinks for themselves is brave and rare. So the question then becomes, if we see things in the world and in our lives that we don't agree with, what do we do about it? I say, learn to distance yourself from what you're observing by becoming an observer. That takes some work, and although you'd have to be consciously conscious, it can be done. It requires an independent mind and nothing less. It's tough to think for yourself when you're surrounded by the ideas, opinions, beliefs, and behaviors of others. In fact, it seems as though it's just about impossible. That's not because it really isn't possible. It's just that most people don't even know how programmed they are. It doesn't make anyone bad or wrong. All it means is that our reality has been engineered, and we are the ones who are part of the engineering process. See, everywhere you look, you're being told a story, sold a concept, or feeling pressured to want to fit in. Let's face it, no one likes to be isolated unless it's a conscious choice on their part. So to avoid the pain of loneliness, or perhaps to resist conflict, we humans tend to want to stick together. And that's not necessarily a bad thing in itself. Personally, I don't think there's anything wrong with wanting to feel connected to like-minded people for growth, comfort, and security. I do, however, feel it's a terrible idea to immerse oneself with group thought, and I see this just about more often than anything else. You lose yourself, and it happens so easily. The conditioning begins the moment you're born. You're plunged into environments filled with thought projections stemming from others. You're directed toward what to learn, what to believe, and how to be. You think you're thinking clearly, but it's really nothing more than being part of a collective system that controls your mind, your beliefs, and ultimately, your life. So how do you become an independent thinker? Well, I had mentioned earlier that the initial stage of this skill involves being an observer. It also requires asking questions, and a lot of them. You may not get answers right away either, although you might want them immediately. That's the sucky part of this whole thing. And when you live in a society filled with people who want what they want when they want it, along with facts, scientific proof, and the security of feeling right, being in limbo with belief systems seems pretty undesirable. But having an independent mind means you may have to be okay not knowing these things for a while. More than anything, it's more of a deconstruction process. It's the dissolving of those hard-set belief systems you've undoubtedly grown up with. That, from my experience, was the key to beginning this journey. When you observe the world around you, but more importantly, the world within you, it helps to do this from a place of neutrality. It doesn't mean you don't have feelings or you don't feel your emotions. It just means you suspend them for a little while, long enough to witness what's in front of you and what's inside of you. Your relationship to your environment, your memories, your teachings, and how things seem to be playing out are all aspects of the programming that you and everyone else were born into. How you perceive the world is a result of the way you were brought up, the way you were taught, and your interpretation of everything around you. Let me ask you this. When you're out and about, running your errands and taking care of your day-to-day tasks, what do you see? I'll give you some examples of what you're surrounded by most of the time. Magazines and other advertisements at the grocery store, doctor's office, and beauty salons. Billboards on the road. Commercials while you watch TV or television, or you listen to the radio, and that includes satellite. Award shows and other programs glorifying and idolizing celebrities who then turn around and tell you who to vote for, what to think, and what to buy. Movies and television shows, some of them labeled as reality, hypnotizing you while you subconsciously absorb everything you see and hear. The schools, hallways and classrooms, filled with everything you need to know regarding how you should dress, how you should perform, where to fit in, and of course, how well you ought to do on your standardized testing, all to determine where you belong and what your future probably looks like. And then, of course, we've got pictures, posters, and other various forms of marketing everywhere you look, telling you what you want to eat, drink, wear, and everything else. And then, of course, with the information age advancing on its mind control techniques, you're bombarded with stories, mostly mainstream, telling you what's going on in what I would only call a heavily engineered world filled with leaders who honestly couldn't give a rat's ass about you, your family, or your life. Well, except when they need your vote, that is. And don't think there's a difference between the two major parties in the world of politics either. They are two wings of the same bird. Regardless of the flight plan, the destination was predetermined a long time ago. So the moral of the story is, you may think you're thinking for yourself, but in all likelihood, you aren't. You're being thought. You're a walking emotional reaction to the programming you've been fed throughout your life, starting from day one. So what does this mean? It means you probably aren't an independent thinker, not just yet. And that's nothing to be ashamed of. Actually, it's normal. It makes you like most everyone else out there. It doesn't mean you're bad. It just means you haven't become conscious of your own unconsciousness. Well, perhaps until now, that is. Look, if you're a first-time listener of mine, or a reader of my blog, or even if you've listened to me before, please don't think I'm being condescending or judgmental. It's very likely I don't even know you, and this may not even pertain to you. Maybe you figured this out already through your own awakening process, and if you did, fantastic. Then you get what I'm talking about. I'm also not up here on some high horse thinking I'm all enlightened or anything. I'm just a regular human being who for most of my life didn't know what I didn't know. And then one day, I watched this world deconstruct before my eyes, and everything I had ever thought to be true suddenly wasn't. It was strange, but I'm glad it happened. I had to ask myself what was true since I finally had to come to understand that everything I had ever been taught was someone else's idea of what was real, what was proper, and what was right. Now, did this mean that my entire life was a lie? That absolutely everything I had ever known was false? No. All it meant was that I'd been right to question things in the past, even if I didn't have anyone around to answer them with total, unbiased clarity. It also raised the question, if I now no longer blindly believe my previous beliefs, then what do I believe? The answer that showed up was, that's for you to discover in your own time and without being in a hurry. Since then, I've gained a sense of what it means to have an independent mind, and I practice it as often as possible, even though it isn't always easy, since I too am immersed in the same constructed world that you're in. So while we continue to exist and operate in this construct, it helps to learn how to navigate in what feels like two different worlds. To do this without losing your sanity, it's a good idea to free your mind and then, and only then, start to interact with society from a place of observation and deliberate action instead of blindly becoming entwined with your environment and becoming of it instead of living in it. Someone with an independent mind observes themselves, others, and the environment with a sense of neutrality, but in full awareness of how they feel and how they want to respond. Questions things, maybe everything. keeps an open mind, and balances it with a healthy dose of skepticism. Knows they may spend a good portion of their time in their own company because they see the world differently now, and they no longer feel they need to belong to any group, although they may appreciate and even participate in certain groups with more of a teamwork approach regarding something productive, like a project, rather than the need to belong somewhere, and sees what is now obvious and what wasn't obvious before. And most important, someone with an independent mind is what the world needs. Don't be afraid to be different, but don't be fake about it either. You see all sorts of people doing everything they can to be different, but what they're really doing is trying to be someone by rebelling against the pain inside of them from not fitting in. I can assure you that true independence isn't about the ego. That's not having an independent mind. That's being a walking emotional reaction to feeling like they don't belong. Nothing is pure from that place. It's tainted with emotional wounds, and independent thinking is about facing those wounds, those shadows within us, and bringing them to light, questioning them, dealing with them consciously, and becoming whole, which could take a lifetime, maybe longer. But what's the alternative? Belong to a group and not know who you really are? Or perhaps being brave enough to admit what you don't know, ask questions, and be willing to live in a state of non-belief while following the golden rule of do no harm while you walk on the path of the road less traveled. Look, I hope if nothing else you got something out of this today, and you don't need to agree with me. In fact, I would rather you investigate all of this for yourself. Just consider what I've said here might have some merit. And if you happen to like this message, feel free to share it. Thanks for listening. I hope this gets you thinking. I hope it gets you thinking independently, or at least paying attention to that entire concept. Until next time, take care.